Hello, everyone. I want to welcome all of our viewers to the Real Talk with the Kansas Lawyers Assistance Program. My name is Danielle Hall. I'm the Executive Director at KALAP, and today I have with me 4 special guests. I will introduce them. I have with me Josh Brown, Joe Shaw, Nick French, and Carissa Leffler. So I understand you guys are bar exam takers. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that today and some of the circumstances that you have undergone through this pandemic, what that's been like, how your well-being and overall mental health has been. And then hopefully we can end this conversation with giving some of your classmates who are also getting ready to take the bar exam some special tips in preparation over the weekend. So that way they can be in their best mental health that they can possibly be in order to sit for the exam. So I'll go ahead and ask you guys, when are you each scheduled to take the bar exam? And we can start with Nick and Carissa.
We're both doing the July 2020, so next week.
Next week, all right.
In Kansas.
In Kansas, okay. Joe?
The same. I take mine next week as well.
All right, and Josh?
September.
Okay, so you got a couple of months here that you have left during this time in order to prep for the bar exam. So I understand that might be a little bit of a different circumstance than what the other 3 are facing. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Now, the first thing I want to ask you all is generally, how would you describe your overall well-being and mental health during this time?
I think it's been pretty stressful. I mean, no matter what, studying for the bar is a stressful thing to be doing. But I think just coming from everyone who graduated in 2020, we kind of went from going to class one day and then we came back from spring break and we just never left our houses again. And it literally just went from everything being normal to just everything being inside. And I think just your mental health really takes a toll when you don't get any sort of human interaction. And just the worry of I had an internship when everything started and just worrying about getting a job. And around that time, March-ish is when a lot of the legal jobs are available and they're starting to get postings, and then everything just went dead. There was just nothing. So I think it's just been really stressful just thinking about jobs and basically applying to anything that you see posted, and hoping at the same time if you do have to go outside, go grocery shopping, it's you're scared to get sick. So it's just definitely different.
And along those same lines, it's Carissa kind of hit on it. It's very hard to structure your days, and without that structure, it's kind of hard to build in time to get a grasp back on building healthy mental health checks for yourself. It becomes a lower priority, and you allow those stressors and things to kind of creep back on you because you're thinking, well, I still have to proceed as if there weren't any issues, as if we had a graduation, as if we were able to see people, if we didn't have to worry about this. And so it becomes kind of it takes the back seat because the priority, of course, is success on the bar exam. And it's building that future. So it's very easy to put that in the back seat and not take a look at that until someone asks you about it. And that's another thing that doesn't happen all that often, is someone saying, hey, how are you doing? I fortunately am lucky enough to have somebody who is going through that and understands that, but the vast majority of us don't have that.
That's understandable. Joe, what about you? Are you feeling sort of the same way?
Yeah, so kind of to piggyback off of what Nick was saying, I think every time, throughout your law school career, people don't necessarily prepare you for the kind of stressors that you're going to experience under normal circumstances for the bar. And so it's hard to get a gauge on whether what I'm experiencing stress-wise is normal for what we're going through right now, or if things are accumulating to a point where I'm not handling it well or somebody else isn't handling it well because of being isolated for so long before even graduating and preparing to study for the bar. And I think this has made me realize that talking about the stressors that you go through in this process and in this experience, I don't think people touch on the realness of it. I think it's brushed off as, oh, yeah, it sucks, but you'll get through it. Yeah, it sucks, but, you know, to think about it's going to be worth it at the end. And people don't actually tell you the specific types of suck you're going to go through during this process. And I'm like Nick and Carissa. I have someone who I live with who's also studying for the bar, and we constantly are either arguing or looking at each other and saying, are we doing enough? Are we prepared enough? Are we not doing enough is like the biggest question. Are we, are we taking too many breaks? Are we supposed to be stopping to eat lunch? Like weird things that you wouldn't normally consider in preparing for an exam like this. Now we have to all of a sudden have these hard conversations on top of studying for the biggest exam of our lives.
Right. That makes sense. You know, Josh, how about for you? I mean, obviously you've made the decision to take the September exam, so you maybe don't have the stress of knowing that the exam is scheduled for next week, but obviously you know it is out there. What have things been like for you?
They've been pretty difficult, if I'm being honest. I mean, it's been that way since, they canceled class, since all of this started. I think, I have pretty severe anxiety and also some ADHD. And normally, like in a courtroom setting or, in class, that's great. Like I channel that and I sort of use it to be competitive. But, it's very, very different when you're at home and you are worried, for example, what was most paralyzing for me throughout this process, I think was knowing that my fiance has asthma, and obviously with COVID-19, that's a concern. And so, just wondering, because he works in a pharmacy, and wondering if, he's going to come into contact with people. They're people are coming there to get their medications. And so every day I was wondering when he got home from work, is this the day that he's going to get sick, that I'm going to get sick, that, and I don't know how that would turn out. And so ever since classes were canceled, it's just been really crazy. And then, as you said, I'm not taking the bar until September. And so, in some ways it's more stressful. In other ways, it feels like, okay, we're going to see how I'll be able to sort of see how this goes, this first go around, from seeing my classmates sit for it. But yeah, I mean, it hasn't gotten any easier.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing with us about your struggles with anxiety and some of the things that you've been going through during this time and just generally go through. I appreciate you sharing that with our viewers today. Let me ask you this, because I want to talk about kind of the elephant in the room. We've heard for the last couple of weeks, at least, in some states at the very last minute, of the cancellation of their bar exams and the rescheduling and sort of the uncertainty surrounding the circumstances. And so I want to talk to you about that and see, how has that affected you and if it's affected you in any way?
I mean, I think for me, it's like I'm always like scared to like get a notification on my phone, like thinking like, oh, this was all for nothing. Like something that has been very apparent is the uncertainty of it all. We went from thinking we don't have to wear masks, and then to we need to stay inside, everything like that. It's like we're going through all these things while thinking about the bar exam. And it's just kind of scary to think like, luckily for us with Kansas, it seems like they've done a pretty good job with meeting the criteria compared to other states. So I'm not as scared as I would be if I was somewhere else and I was having to take a test, say, with 300 people in the room. But just like the thoughts of, is this going to be moving online compared to it being on paper, because that's just a big difference. Like some states aren't allowing any notes, and that would just be a whole different experience. Or if it was changed to just essays only, and then you have to completely change the way you're studying. So that's definitely been something that's been on my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think the difficulty is that we didn't know for certain we were having a bar exam in July, and the bar examiners reserved the right to cancel up until next Monday, like the day before the exam. And so we still aren't necessarily guaranteed an exam next week because they still reserve the right to cancel. And I think that, along with the having to plan for changing of locations and having to plan for if they were going to move online, how financially and how logistically that would work for most of us, was frightening and difficult. And I know a big concern of ours at the very beginning, we moved down to Wichita early because we didn't have to attend classes in person anymore. And so we had to try to figure out where we were going to stay during the exam in Lawrence. And that we didn't want to book it too early because we didn't know if it was a guarantee we would be taking it. And then we booked it a little bit late, and that was expensive. And so we were having to conduct cost benefit analysis on things that I don't think any former student has had to consider before, or very few. And now they were very prominent issues for a majority of our class.
Yeah, I think too, like seeing other states cancel and all of that, I think at first, when this discussion first started happening, about possibly canceling or moving the bar exam, it made sense. And then, you know, the number of cases of COVID went down drastically. And it seemed like things were really under control. And then it sort of made sense that we would go forward with it. And then now, you know, here we are. And so far, what's been the absolute worst of it, you know, and you know, as I've said this before, but, you know, I just want to be clear that nobody, I don't think there are many of us that are thinking like, oh, we wish we could not take the bar exam, because again, then you're the class who didn't have to sit for the bar exam, right? And I think that that's kind of the sort of, people I think maybe assume that the opposite. And so, you know,
I think that we want that stigma associated with our class.
Yeah, it's not a good look. So.
I think that's what it's been centered on, is that the unknown is perpetual, and like Joe was talking about, having to do analysis, like an analysis of different things, and the idea of, one, not just planning on how to take the bar safely, but two, having to plan for every other contingency that we've seen out there. Your foot's in your feet are kind of in two different worlds at the same time. One is trying to plan for plan B, C, D, and E, and the other one is, all right, full steam ahead. We're in plan A. We're taking this bar exam the way it is, but at the same time, part of you is divided.
Will say this, you know, obviously I sat for the bar exam, and so I understand just generally the stress that's involved with respect to sitting for and taking a bar exam. But I think I'm also comfortable in saying that none of us have ever been in your shoes before. You know, we've all maybe had years where we didn't have access to the library to study. Maybe we had to take the exam in a different location than what was expected. You know, the biggest thing I had to prepare for was the location that we took the exam in. When I took it, I was always told that it can be really freezing cold or it can get really hot. So to dress in layers, you know, so this was the process that I went through and the things that I had to think about. But I definitely want to commend all of you for going through this and experiencing this, because I think if one thing that you've taught us in the profession is that we might have a lot to learn with respect to resiliency, our ability to bounce back and get through tough, difficult times and come at it, you know, full strength and doing our best. And I think that there's some stuff that you all have taught us through this process as well. So I wanted to tell you guys that. And mentioning, you know, the different situations that you have had to go through as far as studying is concerned, you know, what has that been like? Because I understand that, you know, traditionally we're used to going in and doing Barbary and then sitting there in a classroom structure. How has that been different for each of you?
Well, I think for me, like I'm more of someone that learns by doing. And I really appreciate that interaction you have when you're in a classroom, like writing on the board and you know what I mean? That interaction with being able to ask a question right there. Because even though Barbary has these videos and they're like, here's my contact information. Let's be honest, I'm not going to contact this random professor who has no idea who I am. Like, I don't feel comfortable doing that. But at the same time, I have no one else to go to. So if I genuinely have a question, I'm just lost. And I just have to like find a different, I have to ask another student, which isn't the most reliable thing to do. I have to like look around for different outlines and see what's missing from why I don't understand what's going on. Because for me, like, it's a hypo that they might say just like on the spot, or like the weird singing they do, is not very helpful. And I need someone to say it in a way that makes sense. And a lot of times, at least like throughout law school, I've always had a better experience with having it in person. It also keeps you engaged, because how tiring is it and exhausting is it to sit there and listen to a video for some of these lectures are like 8 hours long, and just having to like listen to and watch it on your computer and just watch this person you've never heard before. Like, you have no idea who they are and you don't know their style of teaching and you can't even ask a question. So for me, I have not liked having to do everything online and having no human interaction whatsoever and being able to ask questions.
Yeah, along those lines, it's difficult to, like Josh was saying, you get into a classroom setting and you're able to focus your attention on one thing. And when you're home studying, which is for the most of us where we have to be because everything else has been closed all summer, it's like when people had to work from home, right? So you're trying to get your work done, you're trying to focus on this studying, and you notice that your dishes are dirty, or you notice that your bed's not made, or you notice all of these things around your house that add to your stressors, add to your anxiety. And so you take 10 minutes to fix it, and then you're feeling guilty because you didn't sit down for a full 4-hour lecture video without having to pause a bunch of times to get up and to take your dog out, or to make your bed, or to do whatever that normally in a specific study-specific setting you wouldn't even have to think about. And it's frustrating, but I don't know any other options for any of us at this point, because everything was closed up until, well, it was closed and then open for like 2 weeks and then closed again.
Right.
Kind of like what I had said earlier about that structure. I had no idea how much a 5-minute drive to a physical location prepared me mentally for the task that was going to be at hand. I used to be able to go up to the law school or to the clinic building, and that was my physical separation of the task at hand. And so like Joe was talking about, when you're at home, you can't get away from all of the other things that you have to do in order to make your home habitable or a safe place, or not a safe place, but a place where you can be productive. I am one of those people where I will get sidetracked by the dishes and then remember I need to go clean up the yard for the dogs, and it's like it compounds. And so it's been kind of a stressor realizing that everything that you do, because we have 2 people studying for the bar, we have our separate spaces. I study, relax, and sometimes sleep in the same place. And so for a whole day, I might not leave that single space for hours on end. And it definitely decreases the productivity, but it also kind of gives you an opportunity to adapt your skills a little bit and manage that. So it's kind of a twofold thing.
Right. I know all of you each have your fur babies. But I also know that you guys have classmates that have kids. And I don't know about you, but I know I've heard the stories of attempting to balance the kids being home from school, especially when school was still in session, and the lack of summer camps, and keeping them entertained and not ignoring them, but at the same time, taking care of your responsibilities with respect for studying and preparing. Have you guys heard some of the same types of stories from your classmates?
Oh, definitely. Like there have been some people that were relying on the law school opening up because we were told that it was going to open up, I think like the first week of July or something like that. And like some people literally like planned everything, like they found like childcare, everything so that they could go to the law school. And then we find out the day of that it was going to open, that it was not going to open. So I think for a lot of people that was like, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have a really productive July and be able to have like my child taken care of and be able to get that, all the things I need to do to be productive done. And then that didn't happen. So I couldn't even imagine having children and being able to study. Like my dogs are crying at my feet half the time. I can only imagine a child crying at my feet.
I think on the studying note, like for me, something that's been so difficult, Joe was talking about this earlier, but it was within the last couple of weeks that the decision about moving my date to September was made. And, there were a lot of unknowns happening at the time. And I think it's important to note that obviously none of this is really anybody's fault, right? Like, no, it's nobody's fault that this pandemic is happening. You certainly can't blame our professors who had to cancel class or all of those things, right? But I do think taking into account that we have so many moving variables right now, and so it's really hard to be motivated to study, as you guys have all said, at home. But it's even more so hard when you don't know. I have no idea what's going to happen, and so like it's hard for me, again, with somebody who has ADHD. It's difficult to be focused and not be thinking about all of these side things. Like my sister who lives in Chicago, and at the height of this earlier in March, April, whatever, just constantly being worried, has she come into contact? She has a lot of health issues, so all of these things happening at once, I think have been the issue with me trying to study.
I think it's also difficult to manage. So we're told that we have to manage the expectations of our friends and family through this whole process as well. And I think that's really hard when everyone is home, everyone has time. And so it's even more difficult to tell them no, or to tell them, hey, I really don't have time for you, because they're like, what do you mean you're home? I'm home, I have time, I'm still working. And so I think the idea of trying to manage the expectations of your family members is tenfold harder through this whole process.
Well, and you really also don't want to, like, I know it's generally good practice to send the family a little note at the beginning saying, hey, I'm going to be out for a while. I don't know that that's even possible right now, because how could you possibly know that there's a pandemic happening and there's this virus that, especially some of our parents are older, and to know that they could come in contact. Some of our parents live in places that are a lot worse off than right here in Kansas. And so for me, that I haven't even considered that. I have to call my mom every day. I have to call my dad and my sister and make sure that they're okay. Like I can't, it's not even an option.
Yeah. Or you have to give up time. Like I have a grandmother who was isolated for a long time, and because of that, she developed really rapidly onset dementia, and I can't justify taking a weekend to go see her because A, I can't get sick, and B, I don't necessarily know if that'll, compromise my ability to take the exam later because of the other testing they have to do to even let us into the test. And so we're having to make these decisions and sacrifices that maybe some people have had to make in the past, but not for the same reasons.
And it's also, I mean, one of the things that's kind of been affecting that is without getting into it, is how politically charged the COVID-19 pandemic is you don't know who you can, it's kind of hard to go out with that one single note to everybody and put your fears of something that some of the people you might be talking to might think are, you know, not founded in anything. And it's one of those where, well, I mean, that's still, it's still something that's causing a lot of fear. I mean, you've seen it here. And knowing that not everyone is going to see it the same way, it makes it very hard to share that with individuals and let your family members know what you're going through, without knowing how genuine they're going to see that as, and whether they're going to see that as an insult or something like that as well. But I mean, just in what Joe said alone, I mean, the fact that you are sacrificing your quality time with loved ones, with which we could argue that's part of the reason why we're all doing this, is to make our lives better so that we can improve the lives of those that we love, and the people that we are hoping to make proud of. We now have to hide ourselves away from them, and that's kind of an interesting thing to feel.
Right, right. And I can imagine, you know, we all sort of rely upon a support system, right? And for some of us, our family is our support system, and having that inability to have physical contact and to be in their presence, I'm sure is something that is probably, for some of us, you know, really adding on to maybe some of the stress and anxiety that we're feeling because we don't have that traditional support system. You know, to the viewers, I'll say, you know, we all got together last night to kind of chat about procedure on how we were going to do this today. And one of the things that I think it was Joe that mentioned was just simply just chatting about it. Put some of us at ease a little bit more if you hadn't had the opportunity to discuss what you were feeling. So I want to encourage any of the student viewers out there, if you find yourself in that position to where maybe you haven't had that support system, you know, don't be afraid to reach out. You can reach out to KALAP. You know, I'm sure the law schools would say that there's somebody on staff or on faculty that you can reach out to them as well if you just really need somebody to talk with. And you know, family can still be a support system. You know, finding alternative ways of reaching out to them, like we're doing today on Zoom, might be something that everybody might want to consider if you need to have that conversation with mom or grandma or the sister, whoever it might be that is your cheerleader and your support system, and that will just listen to you, because I do think there is something to just talking about it. The last thing I think I want to ask you guys is this, you know, what are you doing for your own mental health? Like, do you have things that you normally do? Are you able to continue to do them? And maybe what's been something a little bit differently that you might have been doing lately?
For me, something I've been doing a little bit different lately. I recently got a piano, and so I've been practicing. That helps me a lot to de-stress, practice piano. And I think being able to go to the gym, you know, wearing a mask helps a lot. But I think a really important thing that I've had to learn to do is sort of forgive myself for, you know, I think there's a sort of like backwards, you know, way of thinking where people just think like, okay, you guys are home, you're locked in your apartment, you have nothing to do but study, so study, right? Like that's what people kind of assume, and that's just not how it works. And so I've had to sort of come to grips with like, okay, you're going to get distracted and you're going to have these little moments of, you know, these little breakdowns, and like to let off steam, and it's okay. Like it is 100% okay for that to happen.
Yes, one of the things I've been telling a lot of even lawyers lately is that it is okay to not be okay. As a profession as a whole, we've got to start accepting that more, and letting go of that stigma associated with the fact that we just have to be perfect all of the time, because we don't. It's okay to not be okay. What about you, Joe? What have you been doing?
I take extra long. I have a fur puppy here, and I take extra long walks with him. For a while, I was like feeling like I need to get back and study right away. But now I use the 20-25 minutes of a break to take a break. And I don't think about whatever I just studied. I just let it go. And it's actually helped me retain, I think, better information. And I feel more rejuvenated, more refreshed when I come back and start again. And so I think along the lines of not being perfect, allowing yourself to take a break and allowing yourself the the grace to say, I can't do it right now. I need some time. And that has, for someone like me who's like constantly like, let's get going, has been difficult, but has also been a blessing. It's helped a lot.
Nick and Carissa?
Honestly, I don't have any good advice because I mean, like a lot of other law students or people who have been in the situation of studying for the bar, my mental health has been the last priority. So a lot of times I'll just have like a casual mental breakdown, and it's like I can't even like go on my phone to like look at cute dog videos. I see all the chaos going on around me, and it just reminds me of how depressing everything is. So I don't really have any advice. Don't read anything on the news. I don't know. Don't stay informed. I've been trying to like find like look up things like things to help calm you down and stuff like that. And I've read that a lot of times people will like recommend turning that stress into like excitement. I haven't really done that yet, but I'm gonna try. Especially like for me, it's like really hard for me to stay positive, and especially when everything around me is negative, it really affects me. So my mental health has not been addressed. I ignore it.
Maybe not the best thing.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I wasn't gonna say anything because I don't have anything helpful. I'm just like, I'm figuring it out. So I'm like taking notes from them, trying to get some pointers. Cause I mean, like for me, like what I do to like de-stress is like go outside, go to a restaurant, try something new, meet with friends, go shopping without spending money because I'm broke. But I can't do that because I'm scared I'm going to get sick. Like I have turned down, we like his parents came through town not that long ago. His brother came through town and we said no because we didn't want to be around people who may have had contact with someone.
And they were at big events with a lot of people, and so that was
right.
I've had a lot of development in that area as far as mental health, because I didn't realize how badly things had gotten. I have always been someone who realizes the importance of mental health, and I had no idea how unhealthy I was being, because I was surface level absolutely fine, and I was just bottling things up, and doing that, attempting to ignore the bad and focus only on the good, because that's something that had worked in the past because the stressors weren't so cumulative. I was able to deal with those things in due time. And what I've realized is every breakdown I have kind of another realization of, okay, I need to communicate about this. And fortunately, I have somebody I can talk to who kind of gets it. But it was the point where I realized that I needed to start doing something different was when I was waking up in the morning and feeling just like the world was sitting on my chest, and thinking to myself, what is wrong with me? What people have gone through this without having this many breakdowns. What is wrong with me? And then realizing, okay, maybe people just haven't been talking about this. Mm-hmm. Realizing that what you had recommended earlier, even if it's just commiserating with somebody, realizing, okay, there's somebody who I can walk with this person, and we can go through that. And that communication, which we've kind of been shying away from because as we've gotten these more antisocial practices of, maybe a text message here and there, but just owning that things are not okay and talking about them. But at the same time, people will tell you that in law school, I was this just obnoxiously optimistic person, like, goodness gracious, can you put a frown on for once? And that has not been the case. I've found that I've circled around that misery or whatever you want to call it, and realizing that I haven't been placing things of joy or remembering, oh, I have 4 dogs that I can cry to or something, or just go play with. But that's kind of the thing, is we have so many things around us. I mean, it's our homes. We have things that we get because they bring us joy, or something that you're surrounded by those things, and just taking the time to realize, like Joe has done with her dog Brooks, you know, going on those walks and realizing, okay, I can take this amount of time. And then also, kind of like what Joe and Josh have been saying, is like forgetting about the guilt that you feel for taking that mental health break. Because I think that's kind of the key thing in that, is one, making sure that you're aware of mental health and how important it is. And then two, focusing on how to bring yourself joy in a way that's both productive, and also kind of factors in a little bit of physical health, because that's a huge part of mental health. So.
Right, I have to agree with you. And you know,
one more thing, sorry. I think another factor that we're all experiencing and not necessarily talking a lot about is anger. And we've gone through a range of emotions, but I think a lot of us are feeling angry and somewhat bitter. And I think the ability to channel that anger into motivation, as opposed to into despair or into depression, is the big elephant in the room. And so it's taken me every single day I wake up, and like Carissa, I see the news, or you wait for the email that the bar exam got canceled, and you're just angry. And so using that to be like, I'm going to affect change by passing this exam, by putting up with what we're going through right now in order to make it better for the next generation. And I think it's very easy for a lot of us to take what's happening in the world and take what's happening right now and feel heavy, feel like a weight that feels like we can't do anything about it. And so every day it's the decision to wake up and say, okay, I'm going to do something about it, versus there's nothing we can do.
And Danny, I just want to say really quickly, because I think this is important. I think that, you know, we don't realize how many of us rely on those tiny little interactions you have between class. Those, you know, a nod in the hallway, a smile at a friend, a pat on the back, a hug from your best friend, whatever. You don't realize how much you need it. And having that sort of taken away, and then being expected to just function and power through it. And again, I'm not saying this is anybody's fault, but I think the conversation has to be had. And I've been saying that since March. You know, call your friends and family and check on them. Like, I call some of my fellow law students all the time, and I ask them how they're doing, just because they're not getting to leave. You know, they're not getting that time, and there are people who really depend on it.
Right. I think you have a good point there. Just reaching out and checking up on somebody is really important. And I think I want to encourage, you know, all of you who are getting ready to sit this week, maybe some of you that are waiting until the September date or even the February date. You know, I think one of the things that your classmates might that are sitting in July might benefit from is from you all reaching out to them and encouraging them. And then when it comes time for the September bar takers and the February bar takers to take their exam, if the July bar takers reciprocate and reach out to those folks and just check on them and see how they're doing, I think that most certainly can go a long way. You know, Carissa, you mentioned that, you know, you're not really, you're trying to figure it out. You're trying to stay on top of it, but really not doing anything. I don't think you're the only person that's in that boat. I think a lot of us are. It takes work. You know, Josh and Joe and Nick, you acknowledge that it takes work to focus on this stuff and put yourself in a better position for your overall well-being. For those of you that are taking the bar exam in July, here's my few quick tips to remember. And even for those of you taking at later dates, keep these things in mind as it gets closer. The last weekend, it's not a sprint. It is definitely still a marathon. And what I mean by that is your physical health, as Nick mentioned, is just as important. Make sure you're getting plenty of sleep. you're staying dehydrated, you're eating, because I know sometimes when we study, we forget to eat, and that's not good. It's not good for your brain either. So make sure you're staying on top of that. The other thing to keep in mind, if you're like me, and I know we talked about this a little bit yesterday, some of us can't sleep, right? Trying to go to bed at a normal time, and you just can't get to sleep because you've got all of this stuff running through your head. You know, if that happens, get up for a quick second, take a piece of paper, take a pen, write down everything that's running through your mind. It doesn't have to be coherent. It doesn't have to be in complete sentences, but get it out of your brain and get pen to paper and then let it go. I find that that helps as well. You know, the stuff surrounding the exam, the uncertainties, the unknown, the having to show up, not knowing if somebody next to you has COVID or not, even though they're 6 feet away and in a mask. You know, my recommendation for you on that is if you're really worried about that and those things and they're just really weighing heavy on you, once again, take pen to paper. You know, the one thing sometimes that helps me when I'm dealing with circumstances that I know are beyond my control, but yet I'm kind of focusing on them, is writing down on paper, what in this circumstance can I control, and what in this circumstances are things that I have to let go because I can't control. I can't control the person that is coming in that's not me, but I can do the things necessary to maybe protect myself. You know, whether that's making sure I'm standing more than 6 feet away as I'm checking in, things of that nature to ease your mind. And then you feel like you have a sense of accomplishment that you did the things that you could control in order to make your circumstances better. Somebody mentioned positive thinking. That's a big thing. It takes a lot to retrain our brain to get out of the negativity. And so one of the things I would recommend that you start focusing on today is not how much you don't know, but how much you have actually learned. I'm gonna pick on Carissa a little bit because in full disclosure, she's one of the ones that's on my trial team, and she heard me all semester in the fall talk about positivity and retraining the brain. And every time we say one thing negative about ourselves, it takes at least 3 positive things to change the thinking in the mind. And they actually say for lawyers, it takes about 11 or 12 positive things to correct that one negative thing. So if you find yourself really talking negatively about what you've learned, your capabilities and things of that nature, please try to adjust that language to more positive language for yourself. And don't be afraid to reach out and talk to people. And don't be afraid to try something new this weekend, like a 10-minute meditation, maybe a 15 minutes of yoga before you go to sleep, or when you take a break when you all are studying. So these are all things that have helped me over the course of my legal career, and I wanted to share them with you as possible tips that our viewers and our folks that are here talking with us today can maybe actually implement to do something of some benefit for them this weekend. The last thing I will say to you all is, you know, I'm sure each of you have heard me say, I'm not going to wish you good luck because none of you need luck. You all are more than capable. Carissa, Nick, and Joe, you are more than capable of walking in there in the next week and taking the exam and knocking it out of the park. And Josh, I'm sure that as time goes on and you're studying, you know, I'm going to remind you too that you are more than capable to do this and to knock it out of the park as well. I want to thank each of you for taking the time to speak with me today because we are awfully darn close to this exam, but I know this is an issue of importance to get out to our lawyers so that way we have a better understanding of what it is that you all are going through as you embark on your journey to about to enter into this profession. So I think it's important for us to listen to you and to learn from you because you do have a lot to tell us and a lot to show us. For our viewers, stick around because I'm going to give you my final thoughts. I'm going to have a last-minute message to the law students taking the exam, as well as to our profession, to our lawyers, and those legal employers who will potentially be employing these folks once they pass the bar exam. All right, everybody, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you.
Since sitting down with these 4 bar exam takers yesterday, I've really had the opportunity to think about some of the things they said and some of the issues they brought up. One thing that I think we can all agree upon across the board within this profession is that studying for and sitting for a bar exam can be a stressful time in one's life. I think we can also agree that dealing with a pandemic is also stressful. However, I can't even begin to imagine what it's like studying for and sitting for a bar exam during the middle of a pandemic, but that's exactly what the class of 2020 is doing. When we concluded our interview yesterday, one common thread amongst all 4 of these bar exam takers was thanking me for the opportunity to allow their voice to be heard, allow an opportunity to have a platform to share their story. So to those bar exam takers that are getting ready to sit for the bar exam next week, or maybe you're one of the ones taking it in September, or if you're in another state, October, or maybe you're even waiting until February, my message to you is this. Please know that I hear you. I hear your stories, and I acknowledge that it hasn't been easy for you. But let me tell you this. You have taught us a lot during this time period. You have really shown this profession what it's like to be resilient, and I commend you for that. To the legal profession, here's my message. I hope that we are showing these bar exam takers, and that we continue to show these bar exam takers some kindness, some compassion, and some understanding. You heard them say they don't want to be seen as the class that just didn't want to sit for a bar exam, because that's not the case for them. So what I'm asking of you is this. If we have somebody who maybe doesn't pass the bar exam in their first try, given the circumstances surrounding taking the bar exam during a pandemic, I ask that we give them some grace. If we have bar exam takers that have opted to take it at a later date, whether that's September, October, February, or even next summer, I hope that we provide them the time and the opportunity so that way they can study and they can successfully pass their bar exam. To those bar exam takers that are getting ready to take the bar exam next weekend, and maybe you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling anxious, I want to tell you this. Please don't hesitate to reach out to KALAP. You can find our contact information on our website, www.kalap.com. Also, over the weekend, if you're taking a break, please visit our social media pages, visit our website, as we will have exercises and activities available for you to do over the weekend to hopefully relieve some of your stress and your anxiety. To those that are taking the bar exam at a later date, please know that we will continue to post stuff to our website and our social media so that way you can have activities that you can do that focus on your well-being. To our viewers out there, if any of you are interested in sitting down with me and having a conversation about an issue, bringing some real talk to our profession about issues of mental health, substance abuse, and even law practice management and the stress involved in that, and running a business, please don't hesitate to contact me. I'm always open to suggestions and ideas as we move forward. As we begin to record and post some of these videos, I am hopeful that KALAP will be able to contribute to ending the stigma associated with mental health and substance abuse and recovery within the legal profession within Kansas. All right, everyone, that is a wrap for this episode of Real Talk with KALAP. I want to thank you for listening to us today, and I especially want to thank our special guests that sat down and were courageous and weren't afraid to tell their stories and to speak out about the struggles that they have been dealing with during this time. Please remember, be kind and be well.